We just got an all-new Ahsoka TV spot trailer where Anakin Skywalker is actually talking to her. It's really good, and it made me want to dive into Anakin's final moments before he died and actually became a Force ghost. So, that's what we're gonna do today. I dove into the Return of the Jedi novelization to when Luke is dragging Vader off the Death Star, and it goes through Luke's thoughts and Vader's thoughts as he goes through moments throughout his life, reflecting on his son, his previous life, while realizing all of the mistakes he's made. It's really cool, mentions quite a lot of fun stuff, so sit back and let's get into it. Also, I do see your comments about my mic. Hopefully today is better. Let me know. Anyways, getting right into the Return of the Jedi novelization with Luke trying to save his father. For the first time, the Death Star rocked. The collision with the exploding destroyer was only the beginning, leading to various system breakdowns, which led to reactor meltdowns, which led to personnel panic. Abandonment of posts, further malfunctions, and general chaos was among everything going on. Smoke was everywhere, substantial rumblings came from all directions at once, people were running and shouting. Electrical fires, steam explosions, cabin depressurizations, disruption of chain of command. Added to this, the continued bombardment by rebel cruisers, smelling fear in the enemy, merely heightened by the sense of hysteria that was already pervasive. For the Emperor was dead. The central, powerful evil that had been the cohesive force to the Empire was gone. And when the dark side was this diffused, this non-directed, this was simply where it led. Confusion, desperation, damp fear. In the midst of all of the uproar, Luke had made it, somehow, to the main docking bay, where he was trying to carry the hulking dead weight of his father's weakening body toward an Imperial shuttle. Halfway there, his strength finally gave out, though, and he collapsed under the strain. Slowly, he rose again. Using what strength he could find, he hoisted his father's body over his shoulder and stumbled toward one of the last remaining shuttles. Luke rested his father on the ground, trying to collect strength one last time, as explosives grew louder all around them. Sparks hissed in the rafters. One of the walls buckled and smoke poured through a gaping fissure. The floor shook. Vader motioned Luke closer to him. "Luke, help me take this mask off." And Luke shook his head. "But you'll die." The Dark Lord's voice was weary. "Nothing can stop that now. Just once, let me face you without it. Let me look on you with my own eyes." Luke was afraid. Afraid to see his father as he really was. Afraid to see what person could have become so dark. The same person who'd fathered Luke and Leia. Afraid to know the Anakin Skywalker who lived inside Darth Vader. Vader, too, was afraid. Afraid to let his son see him. To remove this armored mask that had been between them for so long. The black, armored mask that has been his only means of existing for over 20 years. It had been his voice, his breath, his invisibility, his shield against all human contact. But now, he would remove it, for he would see his son before he died. Together, they lifted the heavy helmet from Vader's head. Inside the mask portion, a complicated breathing apparatus had to be disentangled, a speaking modulator and view screen detached from the power unit and back. But when the mask was finally off and set aside, Luke gazed on his father's face. It was the sad, benign face of an old man, bald, beardless, with a mighty scar running from the top of his head to the back of his scalp. He had unfocused, deepest, dark eyes, and his skin was a pasty white, for it had not seen the sun in 2 decades. The old man smiled weakly. Tears glazed his eyes now. For a moment, he looked not too unlike Ben Kenobi. It was a face full of meanings that Luke would forever recall. Regret, he saw most plainly, and shame. Memories could be seen flashing across it. Memories of rich times, and horrors, and love. It was a face that hadn't touched the world in a lifetime. In Luke's lifetime, he saw the wizened nostrils twitch, and they tested a first tentative smell. He saw the head tilt imperceptibly to listen, for the first time without electronic auditory amplification. Luke felt a pang of remorse that the only sounds now to be heard were those of explosions, the only smells, the pungent sting of electrical fires. Still, it was a touch, palpable, unfiltered. He saw the old eyes focus on him now. Tears burned Luke's cheeks, falling on his father's lips, and his father smiled at the taste. It was a face that had not seen itself in 20 years. Vader saw his son crying, and knew it must have been at the horror of the face that he beheld. It intensified, momentarily, Vader's own sense of anguish. To his crimes now, he added guilt at the imagined repugnance of his appearance. But then, this brought him to the mind of the way that he used to look. Striking and grand, with a wry tilt to his brow that hinted of invincibility, and took in all of his life with a wink. Yes, that was how he'd looked once. And this memory brought a wave of other memories with it. Memories of brotherhood and home, his dear wife, the freedom of the deep space. Obi-Wan, his friend, and how that friendship had turned. Turned he knew not how, but got injected nonetheless, with some uncaring virulence that festered until... Stop. These were memories he wanted none of, not now. Memories of molten lava, crawling up his back. No. Stop. This boy had pulled him from that pit, here and now, with this act. This boy was good. The boy was good, and the boy had come from him, so there must have been good in him too. He smiled up again at his son, and for the first time, loved him, truly loved him, and for the first time in many long years, loved himself again, as well. Suddenly, he smelled something, flared his nostrils, sniffed once more. Wildflowers. That was what it was, just blooming. It must be spring. He remembered Naboo. And there was thunder. He cocked his head, strained his ears. Yes, spring thunder for a spring rain, to make the flowers bloom. Yes, there. And he felt a raindrop on his lips. He licked the delicate drop. It wasn't sweet water. It was salty. It was a teardrop. He focused on Luke once again, and saw his son was crying. Yes, that was it. He was tasting this boy's grief. Because he looked so horrible. Because he was so horrible. But he wanted to make it alright for Luke. He wanted Luke to know that he wasn't really ugly like this. Not deep inside. Not anymore. With a little self-deprecatory smile, he shook his head at Luke, explaining away the unsightly beast that his son saw. Luminous beings are we, Luke, not this crude matter, Anakin said. Luke shook his head too, to tell his father that it was all right, to dismiss the old man's shame, to tell him that nothing mattered now, and everything. But he couldn't talk. Vader spoke again, even weaker, almost inaudible. Go, my son. Leave me. At that, Luke found his voice. No, you're coming with me. I'll not leave you here. I've got to save you. You already have, Luke, Anakin whispered. He wished, briefly, that he could see Yoda again, to thank the old Jedi for the training he'd given Luke. But perhaps he'd be with Yoda soon, in the eternal oneness of the Force, and with Obi-Wan. Father, I won't leave you, Luke protested. Explosions jarred the docking bay in earnest, crumbling one entire wall, splitting the ceiling. A jet of blue flame shot from a gas nozzle nearby. Just beneath it, the floor began to melt. Vader pulled Luke very close, speaking into his ear. Luke, you were right. You were right about me. Tell your sister. You were right. And with that, he closed his eyes, and Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, was dead. A tremendous explosion filled the back of the bay with fire, knocking Luke flat to the ground. Slowly, he rose again, and like a machine stumbled toward one of the last remaining shuttles. From here, as we know, Vader, Anakin, goes on to become a Force spirit. It's hard to find thoughts as he begins that journey, but in the upcoming book, from a certain point of view, based on the Return of the Jedi movie, it looks like we're going to get a story from Anakin's perspective, as he's actually welcomed into the Force. But let me know what you thought of this. Anakin in his final moments, reflecting on only the good memories, his wife, Obi-Wan, Yoda, his son, Luke, who is good, and that makes Vader realize he must also be good. That's the video for today. Here's a sneak peek at the thumbnail for an upcoming fanfiction. Might release this in the coming days, might do it just before Ahsoka, but yeah, this is going to be a fun one. And yeah, check out my streams, trying to stream pretty much every day, so check those out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.